The group is moving fast across open ground. Winter is coming, the food is somewhere else, and predators are never far behind. But one person can't keep up. An old man, his body worn out, his legs failing, falling further and further behind with every step. Out here, that's a death sentence. Not just for him, but maybe for everyone. A straggler slows the whole group. A straggler draws the predators. By the cold logic of survival, the answer is obvious. Leave him. Let him go. Save the rest. So picture yourself there. The person falling behind is someone who raised you, and the wolves are getting closer. Do you stop, or do you keep walking? So what did ancient humans actually do with the old and the weak? The ones who could no longer hunt, no longer run, no longer carry their own weight? The answer is the complete opposite of what survival should demand. And it turns out that keeping these useless old people alive might be the single biggest reason our species is still here. But first, be honest. In that moment, frozen ground, wolves closing in, would you leave them or carry them? No judgment. Tell me in the comments. Let's start with the brutal truth, because it's real, and it makes everything that comes next more incredible. In nature, the old and the sick are a liability. A wounded animal slows the herd, and the herd abandons it. There's no sentiment in it. The slow ones get eaten. The fast ones survive. And that's how it's worked for hundreds of millions of years. By that logic, an ancient human who couldn't keep up should have been left behind without a second thought. And reaching old age back then was rare and brutal in the first place. No medicine, no soft beds, no easy meals. Bodies broke down hard and early. To survive into old age in the Stone Age, you had to be tough, lucky, and useful enough that the group wanted you around. So by every rule of the wild, our ancestors should have abandoned their elders the moment they became a burden. But they didn't. And the reason isn't kindness alone. It's something far more powerful and far more useful. Here's the first thing the old had that no young hunter could match. They were the library. There was no writing, no books, no way to store knowledge outside of a human head. So every single thing a group knew, which plants heal and which ones kill, where the water is in a drought, how to find shelter in a storm, what the land looked like before, all of it lived in one place. The memory of the oldest people alive. An elder had survived decades of winters, droughts, and disasters. They'd seen the rare, deadly events that only come once in a lifetime. The flood that drowned the valley, the year the herds didn't come, the berry that killed 3 people. The young had never seen these things. The old had survived them. And in a world with no other way to remember, killing your elders meant deleting everything they knew. You didn't carry the old man because you felt sorry for him. You carried him because his head held 100 years of survival that you could not afford to lose. And there's a specific kind of survival knowledge the old held that was worth more than gold. When disaster struck, they were the only ones who remembered the last one. Think about the rarest, deadliest events. The once-in-50 years drought. The brutal winter that comes maybe twice in a lifetime. A young, strong hunter has never lived through one. He has no idea what to do. But the wrinkled elder by the fire, she survived the last one. She remembers which distant water hole still had water, which roots you can dig up when everything else is dead, which cave kept the last group alive. Anthropologists studying surviving hunter-gatherer groups have found exactly this. That in a true crisis, everyone turns to the oldest members because they're the only living memory of how to get through it. One old person who survived a famine 50 years ago could save the entire group when it happens again. Quick one for the comments. Who in your family is the elder everyone turns to when things go wrong? Tag them in your head. But the old didn't just remember. They had a second superpower that quietly changed our entire species. And it has to do with grandmothers. In almost every other animal, females reproduce until they die. Humans are strange. Women often live for decades after they can no longer have children. For a long time, scientists couldn't explain why evolution would keep someone alive long past their reproductive years. The leading answer is called the grandmother hypothesis. Here's the idea. An older woman who can no longer have her own babies can instead pour all her energy into helping her grandchildren survive, gathering food, watching the little ones, sharing knowledge. And it works so well that the families with helpful grandmothers raised more children who lived over thousands of generations. That one advantage, having an extra experienced pair of hands, may have helped shape humans into the long-lived, deeply social species we are. Grandmothers, in other words, may have helped build humanity. The useless old woman by the fire wasn't a burden. She was a survival engine for the entire bloodline. So what was really happening here? Our ancestors had stumbled onto something no other animal had. They had learned that a life has value beyond what it can carry or kill. Every other species runs on a simple rule. If you can't contribute right now, you're left behind. But humans broke that rule. They looked at a frail elder who could no longer hunt or run, and instead of seeing a burden, they saw a person worth keeping. That single shift, valuing someone for who they are and what they know, not just what their body can do, is one of the deepest roots of everything we call humanity. Because the moment you decide the weak are worth saving, you've invented something extraordinary. A group where being old or sick or injured doesn't mean being abandoned. A group you'd actually want to grow old in. That's not just survival. That's the beginning of a society. The decision to keep the old alive is the same decision that, much later, builds hospitals, pensions, and the simple promise that we won't leave each other behind. And we can actually see this care written into the ground, in the bones of people who should have died young, but didn't. Across ancient sites, archaeologists keep finding the same astonishing thing. Skeletons of people who lived for years with injuries or conditions that would have made them helpless. A toothless old jaw worn down to nothing, meaning someone must have softened or pre-chewed this person's food so they could eat. Broken bones, long healed, on bodies too old and frail to have survived alone. At a site called Shanidar, a Neanderthal man lived for years with a withered arm, a bad leg, and likely blind in one eye, kept alive, fed, and protected by his group long after he could give anything back. These bones are a message across tens of thousands of years. They say, someone cared, someone made sure the helpless one ate, someone refused to leave them behind. You can't fake that. A healed bone on a frail old skeleton is hard, physical proof of compassion, older than any religion, any law, any civilization. But let's be honest, because the real story isn't simple, and that's what makes it human. It wasn't always mercy. In the harshest times, a famine, an impossible winter, a group on the edge of starvation, some cultures did have to make unthinkable choices. There are accounts from extreme environments of the very old choosing to stay behind so the young could survive, walking away into the cold on their own terms so they wouldn't doom the others. Not abandoned, sacrificed by their own choice out of love. That's the brutal honesty of it. Caring for the old was the rule, not the exception. But survival sometimes demanded heartbreaking decisions, and the elders themselves often made them. Both things are true. Humans valued their old so deeply that keeping them alive shaped our species, and they faced the agony of letting go in a way no other animal ever has to. The capacity to grieve that choice, to feel its weight, is itself something only a human could carry. So when did we become the species that keeps its old alive? There's no single moment. But the evidence runs astonishingly deep. The healed bones, the toothless jaws kept fed, the elders buried with care, they stretch back tens of thousands of years across Neanderthals and early humans alike. And something interesting happened over time. Humans started living longer, and grandparents became common. Some researchers think this surge of elders, more living libraries, more helping hands, fueled an explosion of culture, art, and knowledge, because suddenly there were far more people around to pass wisdom down. In other words, the old didn't just survive alongside us. They may have powered our rise. The moment we stopped leaving our elders behind, we started becoming something no other animal had ever been. A species that carries its past forward in living memory, generation after generation. So the next time you see an old person move slowly across a street, or sit quietly at a family table, or tell the same story for the 100th time, remember what they truly are. For almost all of human history, that person was the most precious thing the group owned. A living library, a survival map, the one who remembered the disaster before it came again. We didn't carry our elders out of pity. We carried them because, without them, we were lost. Honestly, I think this might be the most underrated thing our ancestors ever did. We talk about fire and tools and weapons, but the quietest, most powerful invention was the decision not to leave the weak behind. Every other animal abandons its old. We carried ours up mountains, fed them when they had no teeth, and protected them when they could give us nothing in return. And in doing that, we accidentally became wise, became kind, became human. The frail old person you might overlook is the reason your entire species survived. If this changed how you see the people you came from, subscribe. That's the whole point of this channel. The why behind being human. And if you want to see how these same people survived the killing heat, the freezing cold, the dark, hunger, predators, and even death itself, those videos are on screen right now. Go watch, because keeping the old alive was about memory. But there's one moment our ancestors faced that no memory could prepare them for. The arrival of a brand new life in a world with no doctors, no medicine, and everything trying to kill them. That's coming next.